Wait, so it's, is this working? It's May 11th, 2022. Yesterday wasn't May 13th, it was May 10th. That's when I was just kind of went outside for a little while and put my mind on that pond, okay? Whether I get this pond done, people, remains to be seen. Okay?
Here's Jen Psaki. Let's just play it back to back. We're saying,
hold on a minute.
I think anyone could have predicted a year ago that inflation would soar to record highs. And then she says that government policies have not led to inflation. Well, it's kind of true. The Federal Reserve's private, run for profit, but sets policy with the government. So here she is gaslighting the public.
If we look at the recent inflation data, depending on which data you look at, 2/3 to even 70% of inflation data is a result of energy prices. A large part of that is the result, and Chairman Powell has spoken to this, and Secretary Yellen has also spoken to this, as a result of President Putin's invasion of Ukraine and the impact on the global energy markets. Those are all steps and impacts that I don't think anyone could have predicted a year ago. Go ahead.
Yeah, as we look ahead to tomorrow's inflation speech, let me ask you to look back at some of the...
We can't forget about that now, can we, people?
Last year,
we know it's lurking.
Summers and Ratner and so on. In retrospect,
okay? We know exactly what I was saying.
Some of the government policies were going to lead.
That's why I call it sign language.
I wouldn't say we agreed with them
right?
then.
It's their own sign language.
Now, I would note that
only it's not 100% human
like the American Rescue Plan,
DNA.
The alternative to not putting in place and advocating for the American Rescue Plan would have been the economy continuing to spiral, right? We were providing assistance,
and then they have their Mr. Toucans, right?
Who needed that assistance at the time.
They launched the viral attack.
The victims to the fentanyl crises, the ones that get carried out in hammocks with those perfusion machines on their chest, right? Anyway, okay, so I think I have a raccoon problem. Andre said he's seen a raccoon come out of my cold room. Because you have to remember, these little buggers, you know, they have hands, right? And not only that, but they chew things. They chew through things sometimes. Anyway, he said there's one in my... He said one came out of my cold room. Well, Matilda's in the front. But there was one last night, and Matilda was fighting it off. But I'm outside, and two of them are coming. I think I have 2 raccoons on this property. One in my cold room, and Matilda in the shed in the front. And if I call the city people, the city won't do shit, okay? Been through it how many times already? Right? And once they have babies, oh my God, you're stuck with them for like 3 months and you can't go into your shed or whatever it is, right? I mean, it's bad enough having to deal with 1 raccoon, never mind 2. So I gotta go out and flush raccoons. The problem is, in terms of I have to go out to the back and open up the shed, and as soon as the raccoon, like the cold room, right? As soon as the raccoon gets, like, I don't even know how it got in there, but besides that point, it moved shit and opened the freaking door. That's what it did. And once it's out, I'm gonna try and lock it out. But then I'm afraid it's gonna, if it hasn't already, for all I know, I could have 3 raccoons on this, living in my property right now, people. I could have a raccoon in the X Club. I have to get in there. I'm thinking to look in there today. It depends on the weather. So I got 1 in the front that I need to get into that shed. Because there's wood in there that I bought. I didn't buy it. I salvaged it. I rescued it. And they cut down those 100 trees over there and more. Okay, because they did it over a period of 2 times. They came in and cut all the smaller little ones and left the bigger ones, and then the big ones were around for a long, long time, and then eventually just came and wiped out everything. Anyway, through that process, I got wood that I brought home with Sierra. She helped me carry it, I remember. And I wanted to make walking sticks with it, with the kids. Like if I was to go back to Gateway. I was always thinking to go back to Gateway. Right? Or cut them and, make those musical instruments where you hit the two of them together and right? They're in big buckets. They've been sitting there for what, how many years? 5 years? I'd have to go into my videos. And I want to use them this year. I want to bring them out when I'm doing that stuff in the front with the kids. Right? Clear out the shed and use them. People can walk away with a stick. It will be their walking stick and they can go home and carve it. That's what I'm thinking. As a cheap craft, right? It doesn't cost me anything other than time. But there's a raccoon that lives in that shed now. And here's the problem though. If I flush them out, honestly, people, they really don't have nowhere to go. That's why they're here. And now I'm getting them in multiples, okay? Because those pit bulls over there, they gutted 2 houses. Well, 3, 4. They did the duplex, sheds in the back, and then they took over the next 2 houses along that side of the block. And I seen them, and that's why I got another raccoon in my property. Just trying to survive like everybody else. Waiting for their turn for dog food. My neighbor over here, the one that gave me all those carrots and stuff, all right, they came by one day and they had cat food for me because they actually work with a charity that houses something like 1,000 cats or something. I'd have to ask next time I see them. I know it's like a lot, right? Like maybe 200 cats, maybe even 1,000. It's in Richmond. And it's just nothing but cats. That's it. It's just it's a cat sanctuary. So anyway, through that they get donations, right? Well, anyway, they came to my house and they asked me if I wanted cat food, and I said sure. And they said, well, how much do you want? And I said, well, whatever you can spare. That's right, because I have 3 cats plus I feed Matilda, right? And so next thing you know it, they gave me, in a nutshell, those large garbage bins, the large ones, like, right? That's full of cat food, okay? And then I got a square bin, right? Basically full of dog food. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord. Right? Thank you. They know I feed Matilda. Everybody's getting to know Matilda. So anyway, like I'm okay, right? I got food for them, right? Right? And so there's 2 of them. I figured it out yesterday and Andre confirmed it. And this one's living in my cold room, right by my water tap. And that's where I keep my water jugs. In terms of emergency water, right? I put a lot of jugs in there. And the little bugger pushed things and opened the door and went in. Because those guys over there, they flushed them out of on wherever they were living on those between that corner over there. They will live in trees. They like trees, but they also like shelter. They like to go and just curl up and go to sleep. And if they can do that in hiding, they prefer that, right? And then, of course, the mothers, they want a nest, right? And they bury. What they do is they go in to your stuff, basically, right? And they find a little corner where they can kind of bury themselves in, right? So that the babies are nestled in and they can't escape. And then eventually the babies get bigger and then they end up crawling out, right? But they live like that for like 2-3 months and it's gross. They destroy everything, Right? It's a big chore cleaning it up, depending on where they're nesting. Right? My neighbor over here with her shed, she's had raccoons in there, but her shed keeps getting flooded out because of this building that sits empty over here. Every time it rains, well, not every time, but when the big rains come. Right? So they're probably not in there because she's had them before. Right? And now I got 2 that I know of. I could have 3. I could have one in the X Club, okay? So I'm trying to think, like, you know, like, it doesn't look like they want to use the hen house unless I've got one in there. Because last year, Matilda had her babies under the hen house. I never went in there, though, and, right, cleared everything out, because that's a big job, and that's when the time comes to maybe make a chicken coop, right? It wasn't no emergency to clean it out in terms of, right? But I don't, you know, for all I know, I could have 3 raccoons on this property. All of them in their own little den. Anyway, I can't live in my cold room, so I'm going to have to deal with that. And then where it's going to move to in this yard, I don't know. Because these things are desperate. They're desperate for housing, and they're desperate for food, because they're not quite domesticated, but they are, right? And they communicate. And if there's no food source for them, there's no, you know, there's only so much that they can eat. And they're a pretty large animal, so it's not like they can sustain themselves just on worms, okay? And grub, right? They're meat eaters, you know? They like chicken, right? Dead or alive, okay? So, you know, this is where, like, you know, since I've been here, I've had raccoons, okay? And I have learned to adapt with them. And through that, they have learned that I'm nice and friendly and caring and nurturing, and I will provide for them, you know, not 24/7, but, you know, I'm there more than anybody else is in this community outside of maybe my, you know, few other neighbors that have sympathy on them. But the rest of the people, they just don't care. And then if you phone up the city says, well, it's nothing we can do because it's federal. And then when you try and get in touch with somebody on the federal level, they're protected by federal law. So if the city comes by and says, you know, you call the city because you got a raccoon in the X Club, they just come by and say, oh, well, just open the door and maybe the thing will wander off. Like, okay. Right? So if I called them up and said, oh, well, you know, I've got 3 of your city raccoons living in my yard, right? All trying to get along like the good dogs that they are, right? Even though by nature, you know, right? I just told Andre, like, you know, because they're not like a dog in terms of a growl, because of just whatever, right? Like, even when I go to feed Matilda and she sees the food coming, she goes, like, that's her, she's talking, right? 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 It's not really a growl, but, and then, because, oh my God, when they fight between themselves, oh, it's so scary. Oh, they go into a screech, and they're loud. They're really extremely loud. And, you know, so, you know, right now everybody's just posturing, but clearly I have another raccoon on my property, and it got flushed out, and it has nowhere to go. And if I close off the cold room, I don't know where it's going to go. Oh boy. Anyway, so I'm thinking, well, if I lose this house and I lose everything, because it could happen, My son said, just be prepared. He said, what you gonna do, Mom, if it comes to that? Like, he said, what, what are you thinking, right? What are you gonna do, right? Because he's under the impression my landlady will get the $3 million. Right? And I just said, wait for the bins. If it comes to that, and just be prepared. Right? End of the day is to say, just be prepared. It's your stuff. He's trying to already disconnect from it. So we're talking about, well, if we were to move, where would we move? Sooner than later. Later would be better, but not necessarily more affordable, right? They say if you moved in 2 years from now versus in 2 months from now, right? You know, in 2 years from now, the rent will even be more money, and there'll even be less housing because there'll be more immigrants. And the economy will be what? What will how is it that the world can go to war, have major food shortages here, and, you know, lack of this and lack, but British Columbia, Canada is just flourishing? Minus a few hiccups with the plumbing, electrical, and lumber supplies. Those are just hiccups, right? And I'm like, okay, well, maybe you need to go make a bug out bag. Maybe I need to do a video on my bug out bag for the United States of America on foot with my flag over my shoulder. What do you think? It would be good entertainment. It would make a good little video. Would it ever come to that? Well, I'm not that far from the border, people. I could make it on foot, and I'd have to, because I'm coming in as a fucking political refugee, okay? I'm going to lose my grandkids. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my food. I'm going to lose my stuff. Don't forget, I'm 60 years old, so I have a lot of stuff, right? Right? Lose my family, and all I inherit is concrete up at the fucking strip? Okay. I'd rather swing my bug out bag over my shoulder and go to the United States of America as a political fucking refugee and stand my ground over there and fight for my family. Because I'd only be hunted out here on the streets. Okay? Let's be realistic about it. We know what goes on in the city of Surrey, of British Columbia, Canada. Welcome to the new Congo. As if I got time to be thinking about bloody bug out bags. Okay. And I have a raccoon infestation. And everybody's saying, but please love me. I'm a good dog. Come on. I can protect the property for you. Right? 3 dogs later, okay. I'll sick my raccoons onto the new owner of this house. How about that one? You're not only dealing with me, but you're dealing with a pack of raccoons. Right? Go take it up with the fucking raccoons. They're the original natives of this land. They were here long before you showed up. It's their ancestry, right? Bring in the tribes. Right? Serious. I know exactly what happened. They got flushed out. That's what happened. That's why they're on my property. Obviously, clearly, it disturbs me, right? Because I'm the one that has to deal with them, right? I have to just be, ginger, right? In terms of firm, but nice. I don't want to push it out of my cold room for it to navigate into the X Club. I have to plant seeds pretty soon and stuff. Plus, we wanted to get in there and see what was in there for crafts, right? I know what's in there for crafts. There's a big bin in there of just nothing but bells. That's when I did the bells for Andre, when I was fighting for Andre to get Andre back. And we went to the little Jamaican restaurant over here. And we did bells for Andre. And then I took those bells and I went to court and I put them down in front of the judge with all my paperwork, to which he ignored, people. Yeah, that's when he told me to go get a lawyer, and that's when I told him I can't. Right? Because I don't qualify. And he says, well, you better go put in another application. I said, okay. And then suddenly it was approved in the province of British Columbia, Canada, in the freaking Parliament buildings on the other across the water. Because it had to go to head office. Okay. And then that's how we got Paul. Anyway, so that's on my mind. A bug out bag for the States. I'll walk there if I don't get a ride to the border. Because you know I'm coming in through the fucking bush. Okay? I'm coming in as a refugee. A political refugee. Mm-hmm. To save my ass from the freaking streets, because I don't want to be hunted down by the public union sector. How about that? Mm-hmm. And their partner groups through the private sector, including organized religion. Mm-hmm. Because that's what it feels like, people. Honestly, that's what it feels like. Okay? Not only am I dealing with corruption within the public union sector, but I'm also dealing with organized crime. Well, no, sorry. Organized religion. This is organized religion that commits crime in partnership with the government. And if it comes to what could happen based on that political agenda to hold the status quo, keep the underground economy propped up, keep the bodies going through the pipeline, right? Bring in the trafficking of new human beings to repeat the process, right? And do it in such a way that people don't notice by flooding out their yards with raccoons that are basically homeless themselves. It's just an example, right? I have maps. I'll get a map. I'll figure out the route. And I'm going to work on a freaking bug out bag. And I'll show you, because I'm not afraid. And I have no shame to my game. And I'll hang it on a hook, like a Wesley in that little house. He went back to that little house before he died, because that was the only home that he had. He chose to go there before he went to the hospital, when he should have went to the hospital. Right. Anyway, I guess that's all I gotta say. Gotta start my day. What time is it? 7:15. And I've been up since 5. I don't know where to move this raccoon to. I have to do this with strategy. I'm gonna check the X Club today, make sure there's no raccoon in there. Because if I try and flush them out, they'll just go somewhere else. And they can't go anywhere else right now. That's the thing. Right? People try and keep them out. They want their sheds. They don't want to share sheds with raccoons. You see, this is where a raccoon program would be great. But I don't have the, means to connect the community to establish a raccoon program where these raccoons are basically looked after in a holistic sense. In other words, you know, they're like a dog. They like their little houses, right? They like their little cubbies, right? If you could find a way to build them in somewhere, somehow, where you know where they are and tag them. If you could tag them with different colors, with numbers on their ears so that you would know who is who, you know, because I'm thinking I'm talking to Matilda here, but for all I know, it could be another raccoon, right? But Matilda will come up to my feet and will try and touch my feet. Right. But I think there's a male on this property. Because I seen him. And Matilda, she scared him off. But that's probably the one that moved into my freaking cold room. Right. Because he got flushed out from over there when the guys, the pit bulls moved in. Cleared out everything. I guess just one day at a time, right, people?